everybody, and welcome to the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you're listening to us on iTunes right now, please leave a 5-star review. Guys, I got some stand-up shows coming up this weekend, actually, and I hope you guys come. If you're in New York, if you're in New York City, I better see you at the Stand-Up New York show this Thursday. Gino Bisconti was just added. It'll be his first show back after getting clocked in the face. Plus, my buddy Andrew Harms is going to be stopping by as well. So that's going to be super fun. Then I'm going to be heading upstate to Tannersville this Friday, July 15th. I'll be at the Last Chance Tavern in Tannersville. That's the one in New York, not Pennsylvania. Then I'll be heading to Buffalo Saturday, July 16th. Headlining at Nickel City Cigars in Buffalo. And before that, I will be on a live episode of Who Are These Podcasts with Carl, of course, and other special guest, Jim Florentine. Then I'll be heading to Syracuse to headline the Funny Bone in Syracuse Sunday, July 17th. Then I got Austin on September 8th, the Cap City Comedy Club, Philly, the Helium Comedy Club on September 14th. Then I got 4 shows in New Orleans at the Comedy House, New Orleans, Friday, September 30th and Saturday, October 1st. Then we're kicking off another Content House. And with that, a Comedians of the Compound show at the Orlando Improv. Myself, Gino Bisconti, Anthony Cumia, Lila Hart, a few more special guests will be joining as well. All these tickets are available now. So you can go to my website here, ChrissieMayr.com. Get yourself some tickets. Get ready to loll. Come to my shows. Can't wait to see you guys there. I'm so excited to have this guy on the podcast. Like, I know I say that I am excited for every guest, and that's a lie. I am like genuinely very excited to have this guy on today. We kind of met at the Minds event a couple weeks ago at the Beacon Theater, but I'm so happy he's here with me today. The CEO of the babylonbee, Mr. Seth Dillon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am like genuinely, I don't know if starstruck is the word, but I'm feeling away. This is
I love it.
exciting.
I'm excited to be here. As excited as you are to have me. How about that?
Which view to be like better, up close and personal or like at a distance? I don't know you that well yet.
You know, I don't love it when people are like right on top of their cameras. I feel like I
Okay.
can smell their breath or something. So maybe the
Yeah.
distance is good. I don't know.
Okay. And I did just inhale a large popcorn. I came straight from the latest Minions movie,
Oh, nice.
which was delightful. Yeah, there was an 11-year-old involved in the movie choosing process. So
I
I was
just
like,
saw that with my boys recently.
it's cute. And I was like, at first I didn't understand the Minions. I'm like, what? They seem codependent to me. Like, what are they? Are they retarded? But now I appreciate that they're kind of like dogs. Like they have a good heart.
Yeah, they're funny. The kids love it.
Yeah, and I'm like, they speak a mixture of Spanish, Portuguese, French. Like I don't know what they're saying, but you can get the sense of it. It's pretty cute. I'm now on board with Minions. So, Seth, you were at the Minds event a couple weeks ago at the Beacon Theater. You were one of the esteemed panelists on the Satire and Disinformation panel. It was called Satire and Disinformation, Where's the Line? Zuby was moderating it. Majid Nawaz was on there. Destiny and Libby Emmons. I'm not sure if there were any more on there. If you, as much as you can remember, what were your thoughts on that panel? And, how did you sort of prep for the event? Did you just go in completely open, or did you feel like you had to like, oh, this is about to be like public speaking? What do I do?
I didn't feel the need to prep for that one because of the topic. I mean, the topic is like, that's our life. That's what we deal with is people accusing us of crossing this line from doing satirical jokes and dabbling in the malicious spread of harmful misinformation or disinformation. So I talk about that all the time. It's like it's a common thing for me. It's as natural as breathing. So no real preparation there. I figured that, I would just speak my mind on that and hear what the other panelists had to say. I mean, it was definitely a lively panel. I think we had some good back and forth. There was some disagreement, which is good. I think the purpose of the event was to have, we kind of pit people against each other that would have different takes on these issues. And some of it kind of strayed off topic a little bit, like got a little far afield of what the main topic was supposed to be. But I think I got my points across, and overall I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good event. I didn't really see you much. I mean, we were kind of like, everybody was shuffling around on stage, off stage, back behind the scenes. There were too many places to mix and mingle back there.
There were many hidey holes at the Beacon Theater. There was a whole downstairs catered area, which I didn't expect anybody to leave. I was running up and down. I just didn't want to miss any cues, and then occasionally I would sort of wrangle people. But yeah, you were somebody I really wanted to like meet and take a gay selfie with. So I'm glad that we're doing this. And I remember your panel because Destiny was getting boos, like legit. I was like, this reminds me of like the old days of, I imagine, I don't know, Rome. Like we're in a Coliseum and people, I was like, ooh, it's like off with their head. Yeah. But it was mostly just aimed at Destiny.
Well, I think that one of the problems with like, when you have a room, especially if there's an audience that leans to the right, is conservative, they're really not going to see, just as if you had a room full of people on the left, they're not going to see like the other side of these issues and see that like there's really any opposing view, especially when it comes to something like this misinformation topic, because this is like I feel like it's a sensitive subject for conservatives. We're constantly facing challenges and roadblocks to our expression that people on the left aren't. And to be told by anybody that this is like, it's not really a problem, or it's just as much of a problem for people on the left as it is for people on the right, or something like that, it gets people worked up. And so, they push back on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that was one of the comments that people didn't like. Destiny said something to the effect of like, people don't actually want an opposing viewpoint. We all seek out people who agree with us. And then I had this moment of like, do I do that? No, of course. Of course not. It's the children who are the problem, Like I just was like, I think I'm pretty open-minded. But at the same time, that's why in one of my jokes in my opening set, I said, we have brought in people to speak here today who have been censored, lost friends, lost family, lost their jobs. But don't worry, we also booked liberals. And it was a little bit more, I guess, of a right-leaning or libertarian-leaning audience,
right?
Because most of the jokes were hitting. But what do you say to people? Because this comes up a lot in the stand-up comedy censorship conversation. What do you say to people who say, "Oh, you're not being canceled. It's just you're being held accountable for your words, for your jokes. People are just reacting to what you're saying, and they just don't like it, or they don't like you."
Good question. I mean, that is what they say, right? They say you're just being held accountable. Free speech has consequences, right? Free speech has consequences. And I think that's true. I mean, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble by saying things that other people don't like, or saying things that are offensive. I can get in trouble with my wife if I say the wrong thing about the dress that she's trying on. I can get in trouble with my employer if I had one. I don't have an employer. But you know what I mean?
It'd be so funny if she was trying a dress on like 10 feet in front of you right now, and that was your subtle way of letting her know.
There's a million ways to get in trouble with our words. But the one consequence, if we actually have free speech in this country, then the one thing that can't be a consequence for your speech is to lose your speech. Like that can't be a consequence of using your speech. If you lose it by exercising your right, then you never really had a right to begin with. So I disagree that it's just merely being held accountable when somebody is like actually trying to deplatform you. And I think it's really, it's really dishonest and, sort of malicious on the part of the people on the left who are trying to take the platform out from underneath people that they disagree with. When, like when you're on a platform like Twitter, if I don't like what somebody's saying on Twitter, if you're annoying me on Twitter, I can block you. I can mute you. I don't need to listen to you. There's absolutely no reason, unless I just want to hurt you and damage your life, to like try to seek to have you removed from the platform. So, I don't know. I definitely disagree that they're merely trying to hold people accountable. Accountability for exercising your free speech can't include losing your right to free speech.
And furthermore, yeah, losing your job, this trend of just like, oh, I'm gonna be a detective, seek out your employer and get you fired from your
Yeah.
job that has nothing to do with whatever political, religious, whatever views that you just decide to tweet out, because this is a free speech platform. And the fact that people are like, no, this bothers me so much. And honestly, that act is so selfish, because it's like, okay, to whose standards are we deciding what's offensive and what's not? And
Well, yeah, and if those standards are constantly changing, then that when you apply those kinds of rules, they can come back to bite you fast. And then the next thing you know, something that you've said, maybe it's something that you've said in the past that's no longer acceptable, or maybe something that you say today is not acceptable tomorrow. Then you end up getting tripped up by the same standard that you applied to other people, and you do see them eating their own from time to time, taking themselves down, and it's just this really destructive thing. I think it needs to be, and I said this on the panel at the Minds thing, the answer, and it's not unique to me. A lot of people say this, the answer to speech that you don't like is more speech, like respond, rebut them, refute them. If you think it's harmful what they're saying, explain why it's harmful so that people can benefit from hearing both sides of the conversation. Don't try to shut them up. Nothing communicates insecurity more than needing to silence your opponent to defeat him. You look a lot stronger if you actually engage your ideological opponent in debate than if you feel the need to like hit the mute button on them or take the platform out from underneath them so they can't speak.
yeah, absolutely. Which leads to kind of a recent I guess there's this dilemma. There's two sides to this argument. So Jordan Peterson, as you of course know, was recently suspended from Twitter because he dead named Elliot Ellen Page or whatever, said like, something to the effect of like, she's not really a man just because she had her tits removed or something like that. And just a simple like observational tweet, and he is suspended from Twitter, and to regain his spot on Twitter he has to delete said offensive tweet, and he
I
wouldn't
know
do
what
it.
that
And
feels like.
when did that happen to you?
That happened to the Bee in March. So we've been off Twitter now for what, 4 months?
You're still off? Oh my god.
We're still off because of a similar issue. We made a joke about, USA Today had named Rachel Levine, who's this high-ranking health admiral, transgender health admiral
Very
in the Biden
healthy, by the
administration.
way. Yeah, just
Very super
beacon of health.
healthy,
Yeah.
super gorgeous woman. We had made a joke. Well, USA Today had written a story about how Rachel Levine was their pick for Woman of the Year, and so we did a satirical take on that said, no, we're naming Rachel Levine Man of the Year. And it's a joke. It's not like we were making a claim, like a verifiable or fact checkable claim or something like that. It's just a joke. But it ran afoul of the misgendering policy. So similar to the dead naming thing, they treat that as hateful conduct, and they want us to delete it the same way they want Jordan to delete his. And he said he'd rather die than delete it. So he's taking a pretty strong stand there, but we've refused to. I mean, it's 4 months now. We haven't tweeted in 4 months. And we could if we deleted the tweet, but we've refused to.
Oh man. It's like, what do you do? Because I can understand both sides. Like, I can definitely understand, dignity, standing up for what's right. But the argument can be made that, okay, the Bee has, how many followers do you guys have at this point? Must be
1.5 on Twitter.
whoo, that's a million. So it's like, is the one tweet worth, you know what I mean? Like cutting off your influence from 1.5 million people.
Yeah. I don't know. I would argue that maybe we have more influence now than we did before we did that. If you take a step back and look at, what's happened with Elon Musk and what he's been trying to do with Twitter, I know that's like on thin ice now, and that deal may not go through. He's trying to back out of it. They're trying to sue him and all of that nonsense. But the conversation that's been happening, the reason I feel like it's worth it in some of these cases, I mean, look at like, are you familiar with what's going on with Novak Djokovic and this vaccine situation and the tournaments that he's?
No. What is
So
this?
Djokovic is like one of the best tennis players in the world. He's arguably one of the best of all time. He just won Wimbledon like the other day, and he was
Okay,
denied.
his name is not spelled how I thought. Okay. I'm typing in like joke of it. Okay. This is very ethnically spelled. Okay.
Yeah,
I
he's from
see.
Serbia, so it's a Serbian
Okay.
name. But he's refusing to get vaccinated and saying, this is my choice. It's my body, my choice. I should be able to decide whether or not I get vaccinated. And some of these countries, including the United States, by the way, US Open is coming up. That's played in Flushing Meadows, New York. And they are requiring, well, the United States is requiring that people who come in from other countries be vaccinated in order to enter the country. And so if that rule doesn't change before the US Open, he's going to be denied access to play in another tournament where he could, win another championship. And so he's, in a recent interview, he said, it's more important to me to be able to stand on the principle that I have the right to say what I do with my body and my health than it is to win tennis championships. And I would say kind of the same thing with the babylonbee in the situation that we're in. We want to just be making jokes on the internet. That's what we started out doing. That's what we want. That's what we love doing, what we have fun doing. That's the mission of our site. It's why we exist. But now that we're caught up in all of this stuff, where we're like on the front lines of this battle for like the preservation of freedom and the restoration of sanity, and we're being told that we have to admit that we engaged in hateful conduct for a joke that is just, it's. Joe Rogan recently said that, woke shit is the funniest stuff. Like, that's what comedians should be making fun of right now. And the babylonbee does that. It's true. Like, it is funny stuff. It's top down stuff too. So we're punching up when we're doing it. Like, this is a joke that should be allowed. And we're being required to delete it and admit that we engaged in hateful conduct. And it's a joke about something that this is like reality that we're talking about. Men and women. Can men actually become women by identifying as them? We have pretty strong feelings about that. And we feel like we shouldn't have to admit that we're engaging in hate speech when we feel like there's truth to our joke. I don't think the truth is hate speech. And so it just feels to me like at some point, whether it's us or somebody else, people have to be willing to take a stand on these things and say, I'm not going along with this anymore. I'm not censoring myself or admitting that I did something wrong. I'm going to stand by what I said, even if it costs me something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we don't have control over what we laugh at. And I just know this from being at so many different shows. And it's, of course, like you can't see or feel like who's laughing at the babylonbee, like as they read it. But I think also a laugh is kind of, it's like your body's way of kind of admitting the truth. It's like in a moment, it's like a group of people can come together and kind of admit the same truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can't kind of admit that same truth, it's like you're literally just being pushed into, yeah, whoever makes the rules, well, it's their version of truth. And if we can't laugh at this, if we can't even say this thing, then no one can laugh at it. And then all that exists is our narrative. And it's just so crazy because you hear so many people say babylonbee headlines are just reality and just they seem like just regular headlines from the mainstream media. When did you start to really notice it? I guess I want to I want to get a sense of how long have you been with the babylonbee, and when did you feel like folks started to really come after you guys? When did you really feel like you were starting to become a threat?
Since the day I got involved, honestly. I mean, it's gotten worse. It's ramped up, but I stepped in the spring of 2018, so a little more than 4 years ago, and it was right around that time. That was when everybody was trying to find somebody to blame for Trump getting elected, and they wanted to do something about it. And you had people like, Mark Zuckerberg, who were in the crosshairs, and they were saying, the reason Trump got elected is because Facebook was allowing all of this misinformation to be spread all over the place. Conservatives were speaking freely on this platform. How dare Zuckerberg let this happen? I mean, you had conservatives. This is one of those areas. I think it's really true that, the media has been so dominated by the left. And then you had social media come along, and kind of like radio, conservatives dominated radio for a long time. With social media, you had a lot of conservative publications and voices that were just absolutely crushing it and generating millions of followers and tons of engagement. And the babylonbee was one of them. The babylonbee, with a relatively small audience, had articles that were being shared literally millions of times on Facebook. It was going crazy viral. So there were a lot of conservatives doing really well on these platforms, and they were kind of overpowering and overshadowing left-wing media sources. Babylon Bee articles were doing better than New York Times articles and CNN articles and Washington Post articles on Facebook. And so, the left was trying to figure out, well, what do we do about this? People in Congress are trying to put pressure on Zuckerberg, and the fact-checking thing started. So this was in 2018, and they said, you know what, we got to clamp down on the spread of misinformation. Zuckerberg said, okay, we'll do our part. We need to be more accountable for what's on our platform. Which, by the way, the whole premise of this like Section 230 conversation and the immunity that these platforms enjoy it's supposed to be premised on this idea that they're not liable for the content that's on their platform. They're just hosting it, and they're not liable for it. It's not their responsibility, but they're trying to take all this responsibility and do something about this situation with misinformation. So they hire all these fact checkers, they hire Snopes, whatever. And that's when we started getting fact checked. And the first one that really that was a big deal that got media attention was when Snopes rated a joke that said CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news before publishing it. And the picture, the image that goes along with that headline is just this large washing machine with a CNN logo on it. And Snopes fact checks it and rates it false. And then Facebook warns us that we're going to be demonetized and our page is going to be taken down if we keep sharing fake news. So that's been going on since I've been involved. That happened right at the same time I took over.
That's retarded. Like, how can somebody actually, like, that's somebody's job to go through jokes and type the word false. Like, do these people think that we're stupid? Do they think that people can't tell the difference between jokes and news articles?
Well, I will say, to the credit of people who buy this stuff and are, as Snopes would put it, duped by our headlines, our jokes, it is difficult to distinguish satire from reality today. I mean, honestly, it is. And so, you got to feel for people who see an article. Some of them, that one is a silly, over-the-top joke. It's not possible to spin the news in a washing machine, right? Like, that's just a silly joke. But, a joke like...
This could be real. Like...
Well, let me slide my thing to the left so I can see it. Let's see. Okay, White House still searching for a Biden they can send out in public. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so we did a joke. Trump claims to have done more for Christianity than Jesus himself. Like that was a joke. And
that could be something from his speech.
That could be something that he would say, right? So that went viral because a lot of people found it believable. And so, a New York Times reporter shared that, thinking that it was true. And it got fact checked and rated false. And the funny thing is, it did come true. We wrote it in 2019, and then 2 years later, Trump goes on a radio show and says he's done more for Christianity and religion in general than any other person in history. He actually said that on a radio show.
Wow.
So that's where I have a little bit of sympathy for people who believe that these jokes are real. I think this is one of the ways that comedy and satire are under attack. It's like reality is becoming so insane. It's very hard to make jokes that aren't believable.
Right. Because the same thing that makes someone laugh is the same nugget of truth. And because if you don't have a nugget of truth, you're like, oh, this is just a nonsense sentence.
Well, yeah, it has to be true. It has to be rooted in reality. There has to be a point to it where it's like, I could see this being true. I think the fact that satire, they want us, when they criticize our jokes for being too believable, it's like, well, wait a minute. You can't have a joke that's so divorced from reality that no one could possibly believe it, because then it's not going to be funny. It's not going to land. Like, it has to be rooted in reality. The saying it's funny because it's true is based on the fact that, people find things funny because there's truth to them. So if it's believable, I think that's good satire. But the problem is, it's like it only stays satire for 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks. And then Democrats go and do whatever we made fun of them with a satirical joke, they actually go and do it in reality. And so that's where it's getting, I mean, we're actually tracking these. We have 74 jokes now that have come true, which is just...
I was going to say, if you could think of any more jokes that had come true, but I can't believe it's 74.
Yeah. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. It's like Gavin Newsom named U-Haul salesperson of the year, that was a Babylon Bee headline. And then a Fox headline comes out and says that, so many people are moving to Texas from California that U-Hauls run out of trucks. So, I mean, it's stuff like that, just constantly.
Right, and then you listen to a Gavin Newsom that ad that he put out recently, like, "If you like freedom, come to California." I was like, "How
Yeah,
is he
right.
saying this with a straight face?"
We
Like,
couldn't we couldn't do better. You can't satirize that. It's impossible to satirize.
it's like freedom to shoot up in a tent, freedom to lose your business. Holy fuck.
Freedom to
I
get
was like,
looted.
freedom to get looted, and, I don't know, I feel like me and my buddies in New York City are saying like, "Ah, New York City, at least we're not LA." Like, that's the literal only redeeming quality left in New York
It
City.
could be worse.
It could be so much worse. Damn. It's just so interesting. I just, to me, it seems like this disinformation thing was ramped up when there was perhaps some questions about a certain election. But then it's tricky to me because they can stifle and censor some people, and they've been very successful with that, but not everyone is stupid. It's like you're gonna have people behind, Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin, who was suspended just for commenting on what happened to Jordan Peterson. I think he eventually was reinstated.
Mhm.
But, uh, do they really think they can win? That there's just not I just don't think there's enough obedient people to pull this off.
I do think that there need to be more people. I mean, imagine if these things that they're suspending people for, the things that you're not allowed to say, like, and there's so many things. If you go back, I was just reminded of one the other day. There was back when Kyle Rittenhouse was before his trial was over. You could get suspended on Twitter for saying that he was innocent. Like you weren't allowed to support him. If
Oh my
you
god,
if you
that's right.
donated to his fundraising campaign, or if you said, Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero or he's innocent or whatever, like you could get suspended for that. I mean, there's been so many examples of things that you're not allowed to say on these platforms. It's the list is long and getting longer. Eventually, people need to be willing to, in I think large numbers. Imagine if tens of thousands or millions of people took the Babylon Bee joke that we got suspended for and shared it. What is Twitter going to do? Ban 5 million people? Even 500,000. Are they going to do that? Are they going to suspend that many people for sharing that joke? You could kind of force their hand and make them ban everybody that disagrees with this woke nonsense. And eventually, it almost feels like that's the point. Like sometimes I feel like they're doing provocative things just to get us to respond to it and say, no, a man can't become a woman just so that they can ban you and get one more person silenced. But, if we actually stood up in numbers, I think part of the reason there's so much power and influence on the left with these issues is that so many people self-censor and they
Mhm.
acquiesce and they delete the tweets and they dance around the things and refuse to say the things that might get them deplatformed. And so they're just playing into it and giving them more power than they should have. And I don't know. I think it'd be a wise strategy if we actually fought back by simply saying the things that you're not supposed to say. Make them ban you. They'll ban themselves into irrelevance if they only have leftists on their platform. Twitter needs more than just leftists on their platform.
They'll ban themselves into irrelevance. That's a really strong point, and so you're on the side of, like, have the balls to say, like, especially when it comes to YouTube, like, there are certain things we could talk about right now and, like, poof, this could get demonetized, and actually many, many of my episodes have been because I just can't keep my mouth shut, or I can't think of, code words fast enough. So you're just like, "You know what? Run into the fire. You will emerge as a phoenix. Don't have any fear."
Well, I mean, everybody's got to make that determination for themselves whether or not it's worth it. I think, and when you reach a certain point where they're trying to tell you that 2 and 2 make 5 and you have to agree with them and you have to decide, am I going to A, agree with them, B, shut my mouth and not say anything, or C, stand for the truth and insist on speaking the truth, even though it might cost me something. And I think that eventually more people need to start choosing C, or this stuff only gets worse.
True, and I think satire is such an important tool for changing minds because nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Nobody likes to be called a sheep. Nobody wants to feel like, "Oh, wow, like I'm just now waking up." No one wants to feel like they got an experimental injection that they didn't have to, et cetera, et cetera. And I think satire is an important tool. Like, oh, you can gently change minds, because it's the way to introduce maybe a bit of truth or a different opinion. It's like, I always feel like, I mean, that's why I love comedy so much, is like you can really change a person's mind. A gentle shift can happen through laughter. It's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, and I'm not being personally attacked. So that, I think that
I'll tell you,
brings
I don't know if you've
people
heard this
along.
quote. G.K. Chesterton said that humor can get in under the door while seriousness still fumbles at the handle.
Ooh, sneaky.
Yeah, I like that.
That's
It's
a great
disarming.
quote. And when you were describing Twitter before, I'm like, Twitter sounds like a cunty ex-girlfriend or a cunty baby mom who just exists to make your life miserable. Like, the rules are enforced, differently depending like what time of the month it is, or, she'll never say she's sorry. Like, maybe she'll let you get back on, she'll unsuspend you, but then it's like, oh, what about the other people? Like, are we gonna unsuspend everybody else guilty of the same shit? That's
Yeah.
what's really unfair. It's like, I mean, we could each sit here and name half a dozen people who should have come back on Twitter now.
Well, here's the thing. This is where this conversation gets so interesting for me, because these platforms, they really did start out like Twitter. It's still there, by the way, in their mission statement. Like, they have a mission statement that says they're committed to free expression. They say that. And then at the same time, over the course of the years, they've started doing the fact checking. So they're getting rid of misinformation. Now, the real thing that it shifted to, and this is what started to impact us with this Rachel Levine joke and everything that's going on with Jordan Peterson and everything, is, misinformation was where it all started. And now it's kind of shifted to hate speech, hateful conduct. And that's where all of the woke stuff is getting baked into the terms of service, so that you basically have to agree with woke ideology when it comes to things like race and gender and whatever, or just stay silent. You either have to agree with it or stay silent, or else you're in violation of their terms. But they say that they're committed to free expression. They say that, they want everybody to be able to express themselves without barriers. That's in there somewhere. I don't know. I can't. It's small font.
Yeah, I've pulled up. I hope this is the most recent one. This is from I just DuckDuckGo searched Twitter mission statement, and this is the first thing that came up. Twitter mission statement: reach the largest daily audience in the world by connecting everyone to their world via our information sharing distribution platform. Twitter vision statement: we believe in free expression and think every voice has the power to impact the world. Yeah, every voice has the power to impact the world, but we don't want it to, clearly.
Right. Yeah. Every voice. Yeah. But not voices that misgender or dead name or whatever. Like, you can't even have a debate about these things unless you agree with their ideology. You're in violation of the hateful conduct policy. And they don't consider that a violation of your free expression. They consider hateful conduct to be so far beyond the pale. It's so egregious that it should essentially be illegal. And so, what it comes down to is, they feel like they're justified in removing people from the plot. They're still committed to free expression, just not really, really, really bad, hateful expression. But then it's everyone who disagrees with us is either misinforming you or they're hateful. So you end up with an ideological echo chamber where everybody is agreeing and saying the same things, or self-censoring so that they can get along with everybody that they disagree with. And it's just absolute madness. But like what Musk wanted to do, like what Musk is saying is, look, I'm a free speech absolutist. Twitter is engaging in viewpoint discrimination. They are the public square. And this is where you can really zero in on the problem. Like, if Twitter is, like Musk says, the town square of the modern age, it's digital now. It's not like out in the actual physical town. This is where public discourse happens, is online in these major social networks. If that's true, and if Twitter is engaging in viewpoint discrimination, then we don't have free speech in the town square anymore. And the First Amendment is supposed to protect that. So, Musk is like taking matters into his own hands. If these are private companies and the laws haven't caught up to actually like safeguard free expression in the public square, then I'll come in and I'll do it. And I will restore free speech in the public square. And so, that seemed to be where he was coming from. And in that case, I think that's a progressive move, in the sense that he's, if you're going in the wrong direction, progress means like going backwards and finding the right road and getting on the right road, So he wants to take Twitter back to its original intent, which was to be a platform for free expression without barriers. They were much better at that before than they are now. And so, that's what he was trying to accomplish, at least from his public statements, what he was saying. And I think it's a noble effort. I mean, we really need that, because if you zero in on the issue, like I just said, the issue is this is the town square. These platforms are the town square, and we don't have free speech in the town square. So one way or another, that needs to be dealt with. If it's legal for these companies to do this now, when they're hosting the public square, the question is, should it remain legal, or should our speech rights trump whatever rights they have as a private company?
Yeah, Elon, if this deal completely falls through, he served a purpose of someone who was, I think, finally able to stand up to a bully, like go kind of toe to toe and be like, yeah, you have to answer for this censorship. You have to acknowledge the fact that mostly conservatives have been shadow banned. Um he even brought attention to, he said, yeah, I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe in free speech, and as it applies to the law.
Mm.
And I think he shined a light on, I mean, if they hadn't realized Twitter was kind of fucking up before, I think just brought attention to even more people that they are not doing what they should be. So if it completely falls through, I think one of the reasons was, he claimed, or he said Twitter claimed it was only 5% bots, and it could be a quarter or more percent bots. Like, I've heard folks say they think it's 50% or more bots, which is insane.
Do you follow the viral tweets topic? Like, you can like choose these topics to follow on Twitter, and one of them is
No.
viral tweets or funny tweets or whatever. But like the viral ones, it's all the like, it's weird stuff. Like, it makes me feel like bots are everywhere, because you'll see a tweet that's just like, if he says he loves you, say you love him back. And it's got 248,000 likes. And I'm like, that's not a profound or interest. That's like
So
totally
hold
vapid.
on.
There's
Tell me
nothing
if I'm
meaningful there.
dumb. I have just put in the search viral tweets. Is this the way to search for them? And this is what comes
Uh,
up. I mean, they're all doing pretty well.
no, there's an actual like topic you can follow. Like, it's an actual thing that you like click follow on.
Oh, would it be explore? Someone in chat surely knows this.
Yeah, you've gotta zero in on like the actual topic and follow it.
But even if you look at
And then
this one that has like over 35,000 likes, I'm paying for your haircut, me after the haircut. And it's like, this is stupid.
there's
This
a
is
lot
like
of really
not
stupid
clever.
stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, how in the world are there like 100,000 people who thought this was a profound statement? I don't understand it. I don't know. Is it bot activity? Maybe. I don't know. Like, Twitter does seem to have a bot problem. Whether that's, I don't know what Musk is getting at with that. I think mainly what he's saying is, look, that Twitter had made public statements about how many bots there were. If those statements were misleading or dishonest, then that changes the value of the company, which changes what I would offer for it in a deal. And so that really seems to be what he's getting at.
Yeah. It's like an old timey, like you were supposed to barter or like buy a wife from a man in a small town, and then like you meet the wife for the first time. You're like, oh no, she's actually 75.
Right.
I want my money back. The deal's off. And if you followed even the logical conclusion, so it's like, okay, they suspend Jordan Peterson because of hate speech. It's like, first of all, what are the odds that Ellen Page would have even seen that tweet? So it's like, even if we follow it through, it's like, okay, so Ellen Elliott Page sees that tweet, her feelings are going to be so hurt that it's akin to hate speech. Like, she's going to be like suicidal. Really? That speaks more volumes of her inability to cope. And it's like, anybody on the street could yell something like that or worse at her. Nothing's to stop the person on the street to
Right.
yelling them at him, her,
And you have to deal with that. And by the way, they're perfectly fine with you inciting violence or being hateful in a different direction. I mean, if you look at what just happened recently with like libs of TikTok, people on the left were accusing libs of TikTok of supporting terrorism because like the Proud Boys showed up at some event, like some family-friendly drag show that libs of TikTok had talked about. And the Proud Boys show up and they're like, oh, libs of TikTok is going to get somebody killed because, you know, they're talking about these events and coordinating with terrorists and blah, 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 blah. And then the same people will go out there and say things like the Supreme Court justices that overturned Roe v. Wade should never know another day of peace. They should be accosted in the streets. And, you know, they're basically calling for these people to be intimidated and harassed and bullied. And it never goes the other way. You know, none of them ever get suspended. They don't get locked out of their accounts for inciting violence. It just doesn't count when they do it. And when the target of it is somebody who's conservative. And the argument tends to go like, oh, well, being conservative or being Republican is not a protected class. You can't engage in hateful conduct against them. And it's like, well, maybe it should be, because there's lots of hateful conduct, you know, directed at them. And if the whole system is rigged so that the left can be as mean and nasty and terrible and violent as they want, and the right can't even disagree with them, then the whole thing, it's just like you end up with only one side that's ever getting enforcement and the other side is completely free. And that's just not sustainable. It doesn't work. It's not fair, but it's also not sustainable. So,
and yeah, if one side is constantly having to just take the abuse, it's like, that is how you create actual radicals.
Yes, but it's also, you know, fine if they want to say mean things about us. You know, like I said, you can mute them, you can block them, you can ignore them, or you can rebut them. You don't have to say that they need to be removed from the platform. So I don't know, an actual call to violence, a threat of violence, you know, saying that you're going to mail a pipe bomb to somebody or something crazy like that. I mean, those things should result in some kind of enforcement penalty. They're dangerous. It's a legal issue at that point, not a speech issue. But, you know, when people are just being mean to each other, it's so weird to me that we have like protected groups that you can't even joke about. And then other people that you can you can say anything you want or do whatever. It's like, I don't want special protections for myself. I just don't think anybody else should have them either. Like, we should be able to joke about each other indiscriminately. We should be able to all argue with each other. You know, people should even be allowed to be mean to each other. Musk said that too. He's like, people should be allowed to say outrageous things on Twitter.
That's what true equality is making fun of everyone. And I'll hear the same woke comments. Oh, be the first one to say that's hate speech. You can't make a joke about trans people. You can't make a joke about, you know, trans suicide, but they'll be the first people to make fun of a guy for being old and white or irrelevant, or like, you know, white guys they don't count. You can say all the worst shit about white guys, but just
this is the punching down conversation, right? And this is where, you know, Facebook is actually like codifying this in their policies. Like, you can make jokes, you can be a comedian, you can be a satirist, you can be humorous, whatever, but you just can't punch down. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. If punching down just means like you can't joke about people who have less power and privilege than you, right? So if you're joking about somebody who falls into one of these marginalized categories, then you're punching down. Well, I mean, does that mean that like straight white male Christian guys just can't joke about anything except themselves? Like, you can only make fun of yourself. I mean, and then you end up putting yourself in this structure, this hierarchy, right? Where you have to think to yourself when you're writing a joke, and this is so absurd, it's so stupid. But like, if I was to think like them, I would have to think to myself, you know what? I shouldn't joke about that person. They're beneath me. Like, what a unbelievably condescending and terrible thought to have, to be thinking of people in those terms. Like, that's how they want you thinking. Instead of thinking, is this joke funny, or is there some truth to it? Or, you know, is this going to get a laugh? It's, am I joking about somebody who's beneath me? I mean, then you're putting yourself into that structure, and you're only reinforcing this idea that there's people who are at the top and people who are at the bottom. And I just think I reject the whole thing. I think that we should be looking at each other as equals. We should be willing to joke about each other indiscriminately. And we should especially be joking about the people who are trying to impose these dumb rules on comedians.
Yeah. And I feel like whenever you ask somebody, well, who's beneath you, or who's beneath us, in your opinion, the answer to that question will reveal more about that person and their true feelings and their true racism than anything else. Because it's like, you ask me that question, who's beneath me? Nobody. Like, I have a very good comedian friend who is super disabled, and like, we take shots at each other all day on Twitter. Shout out to Crip Daddy. So it's like, I see him as
they'll
my
reject
equal.
the idea. They'll reject it and say, well, I'm not saying they're beneath you. I'm saying they have less power and privilege than you. So they'll say, well, a trans person has less power and privilege than you, so you shouldn't joke about them. It's like, really? Is that a respectful way to are you really respecting somebody by saying, "Oh, you're so oppressed, I shouldn't joke about you"? I mean, come on. At least give them the
Yeah.
dignity of treating them the same way you would treat everybody else. I think
And
that's how
what
you
does
treat
that
people with
do?
dignity.
What does that give them? Does that, is me not making fun of a trans person gonna get them a better job? Is it gonna make them perform better on an interview? Is it in fact, like, if I'm roasting a room or I'm at a comedy show and I ignore the trans person, it's like, well, don't you care so much about being seen, being acknowledged?
Right.
So
I think
it
it's also
sounds
too,
good.
this is a good point too, is that, comedy confronts us, like you said, when you're talking about people laughing and like acknowledging the same truth, like comedy that's done at your expense is a healthy thing for a person to experience. It's just like hearing an idea that you disagree with on a college campus from your professor or or other students, or debating somebody exposes you to something that you hadn't thought of before, or challenges something that you believe. Is it comfortable always? Like, if you're sitting in the front row and the comedian is picking on you, is it comfortable? Not necessarily. But is it a good thing for you to be able to laugh at yourself and to be able to like be resilient enough and have thick enough skin that you can take a joke? Like, isn't a person who has thick enough skin to be able to take a joke better than, like, and from a maturity standpoint, somebody who doesn't have thick enough skin? And somebody that can handle an idea that they disagree with, aren't they more resilient, and don't they have stronger character than someone who breaks down in tears and cries for their safe space? I mean, these are the things we should be teaching young kids, is to be more resilient, is to have thicker skin, because the real world can be mean. People can be mean spirited and cruel, and they're going to bully you. And like, if someone makes a joke about you, teach your kids to joke back. Like, it's not about punching down, punch back when someone throws a punch at you. And that's how you like defend yourself, both physically and in the realm of ideas. And we're just leaving young people so ill-equipped to defend themselves, both physically and mentally, spiritually, whatever, by saying, look, you need to be coddled, you need to be put in a safe space. Nobody should ever make you feel bad. And if they do, report them immediately. I mean, that's just the least safe and most harmful thing that we can possibly do to young people.
And you can't do that in the real world. You are unprepared for the real world. It prepares you to what? Just make a TikTok in your car sobbing. Like, that's, you don't have thick skin. Like, the first time somebody said I looked like a horse, I was really upset. Probably the first 10 times, pretty upset. But now that it's been like hundreds of times, yeah, exactly. You can have a comeback. You can say, like, oh, at least I look like an animal people still want to have sex with, or whatever it is. You learn to and guess what? Now it doesn't bother me anymore because it's the least, it's an unoriginal insult, and I'll be
Yeah,
like, "What else you got? Come on."
right.
So, and it better prepares you for life, because life is gonna punch you down. People are gonna make fun of you, whether they're friends with you or not. Yeah, it's just it's
The funny
a
thing, you bring up the TikTok
punching
thing, like,
practice. Yeah.
Libs of TikTok features those videos and will like share these videos of like leftists melting down in their cars, like filming themselves, and like simply taking that, which they put out there publicly, by the way, they shared it on social media, and taking that and like resharing it to a broader audience. You'd think they'd be like, oh, you made me more popular. You got my message out there. You shared what I was already sharing publicly. They freak out and act like they're being targeted, and and they're victims of like violence. And it's just, it
Just for
just
holding up a
adds,
mirror, just for being like, "Oh," just for kind of
yeah,
yes-anding it,
holding,
just for a big ol' retweet.
yeah, just showing them the way that they're actually it enrages them. It's the most amazing psychological thing that they're like out there publicly acting this way. And then you're like, look at this person acting this way. And then they melt down. It's like, well, you put it out there. This is you. We're
It's
showing
so
you yourself.
easy, no matter what side you're on, to kind of cultivate your own little internet bubble, and what Lives
Yeah.
of TikTok does is it takes people in a, mostly mentally ill leftist bubble, picks them up like a toy crane, and just sort of plops them out into a different area of the internet, and what rushes in all this kind of accountability and
Well,
real
there's a
genuine
lot of
reactions.
mockery, right? There's a lot
Mhm.
of mockery that happens. And, maybe, and this is where, you can get into a discussion about whether or not does it qualify as bullying or whatever. I think I've said it before on Twitter. We need to bring back shame, honestly. Like, there is such a thing as shameful behavior.
Shame works.
When adults act like children, when a teacher is relying on the children in their classroom to affirm them so that they can feel like emotionally secure in their identity or whatever, it's like, you deserve to be mocked mercilessly because that's ridiculous. You're childish, grow up and stop treating kids that way and putting that on children. And so, like, I think, honestly, like, it's defensible. It's morally defensible to say, look, we do need to bring back shame. These drag shows for kids, family friendly drag shows where people are like, men or gay men dressed as women doing like twerking and accepting money in their G strings from like children in
Ugh.
bars and libraries or parks or wherever it's happening. It's like, this is shameful behavior. It's not appropriate for children. You deserve to be mocked for it. And no, we're not inciting violence by saying that. We're just simply saying, allow kids to be kids. Like, allow them to be innocent. Stop trying to corrupt them and getting off on it in the process. I think we need to bring back shame.
Absolutely. Shame back in our parents' generation was called a little something, it was called tough love. It was like, if you were too fat, if you had gained too much weight at college, your mom was going to let you know. If your favorite sweater made you look like a fullback, your mom was going to let you know, and you're never going to wear that sweater again, even though you got it from Abercrombie with your lifeguard savings. And it helps to guide. That's how the older generations guide the younger ones. And to your point about, yeah, full grown women, unfortunately, it's mostly women, like, looking for validation from people who don't even have like an ID yet. They don't have credit cards, like, they're children, like, they don't know
Right.
shit. Just because you want to take your hands off the wheel and let somebody else steer. It's like, yeah, we should acknowledge kids. We should listen to their feelings. We should give a shit when they cry, but don't look for kids to affirm like your adult mentality. And I think a lot of these people are emotionally stunted, have been abused. Like, they are not emotionally where they need to be for their age.
No, not at all. But to say that, what I was just talking about, bringing back shame, whatever, and to call that and to say, oh, well, I'm endorsing bullying. No, not. I mean, look. Does the left pull any punches in being critical of people on the right? I mean, could you easily say that they are bullying and harassing and whatever? I mean, we're adults, right? We're adults talking to where we can be critical, even harshly critical of each other's ideas and behavior. And if it's fair game for them, if they can call everyone who disagrees with them a racist, a Nazi, whatever, like, are they not trying to shame and bully people into compliance? Look, they want you to be like, if you don't even post a black square to celebrate, the Black Lives Matter movement or something, you are vilified as being complicit in systemic racism. I mean, what is that if not like bullying
That's
and pressuring
bullying.
you to get him
Yeah.
to say and do what they want you to do? It's like, look, you guys, you engage in that behavior to such an extreme. You can't handle it when anybody pushes back and mocks you even or jokes about you. I mean, come on. You can't have it. You can't have it just as a one-way street.
The Black Square Day, that was pivotal for me. Like, I remember that day. I was actually probably like about to go do it. I was like, I guess I'm doing this because everybody I know is doing this. And I could not bring myself to do it. I'm like, why do I have to prove to people that I'm not racist? Like, people who know me know the truth. Like, why? And what is it going to do? Is it gonna stop one Asian chick from being pushed into the subway? No, like, it's not gonna do anything. Oh,
What
wait,
it
that's Asian
does is
hate. Never mind.
it shows the bullies that you're on board, And
Yeah,
so I think that anybody who pushes back on that nonsense is in fact standing up to bullies, not in fact engaging in bullying. So I
and
would
it's like,
argue
y
with that
it
point
says
too.
to that group, like, "You don't get to define who's a good person and who's not."
Right.
But
Right.
they absolutely use bullying. Thank you to Scott Norsworthy for becoming a member. Danny B, Thanks for the super chat. NVIDIA, have a great show. Catch you on the replay. All right, he's not here, IRL. Matthew Hammond, the Babylon Bee video of Satan in a press conference talking about Roe v. Wade being overturned was great. Also, thank you for helping Libs of TikTok.
Thank you, Matthew.
How did you help them?
I worked out a deal with her so that she could do this full time and work for me, basically. So she now has a job running Libs of TikTok, so she can't get canceled. Doesn't matter whether they dox her or whatever. We'll provide security. We'll do whatever she needs.
Oh,
so
shit. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's we've partnered up. So we're working together now to like build Libs of TikTok basically into a business that she's at the helm of. But she has financial backing now so that she doesn't have to worry about, getting canceled on Twitter and whatever happens.
That's incredible. Did she have like a regular day job?
I don't want to talk too much about what she does personally because she's had enough of that exposed.
Of course, God, like I just didn't know if she got fired or something and you
she was at risk from having, her livelihood losing her livelihood and not knowing what she was going to do. And, Libs of TikTok was putting her in jeopardy basically in a number of ways. And so to get some financial backing was helpful for her simply because she doesn't now have to worry about what is the end result of this going to be.
Wow. That's really amazing.
Yeah. So I think that's what he's referring to there.
Damn. Yeah, she's another one I'm like dying to have on. Douglas Dauntless, Eastern Europeans are based. Oh, I wonder if that's about the tennis player. Only offensive speech needs protection. True. Very true. Matthew Hammond, will not the Bee publish a Babylon Bee article? Is that a joke?
Not the Bee. So do you know what Not the Bee is?
Oh yeah, that's the other.
Yeah, that's like the spin-off of the Bee where like we had so many people that they would see a story that seemed crazy, like it should be satire, but it somehow wasn't. And they would share it and they would use like the hashtag Not the Bee. People do that with The Onion too, Not the Onion. And so we started a whole site dedicated to these crazy stories that should be satirical. So
where the lines are
they don't
blurred.
need to. I mean, the Bee can still publish its own articles. We still have pretty good reach. We just can't, we rely on other people to share them on Twitter because we can't tweet them out.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
We did get banned on TikTok too, though, by the way.
Damn, for what?
I don't know. They didn't give us a reason. They just permanently suspended us and gave us no option to appeal. So
wow.
There goes another one. We have a social media manager, and she's like, I'm going to be manager of the vibes here pretty soon if I have no social media to manage. So she's feeling like her job is in jeopardy because these networks are just dropping like flies.
Damn. But I imagine you guys are on all the other like all platforms like Minds, of course.
Yeah, we're on a bunch. Yeah, we're on Minds, Parler, Gab, Truth, where we have our stuff on every platform. Obviously the big ones are the ones that drive the most traffic, where you get the most reach. And I've never felt like, so many people will ask me all the time, like, why do you stay on these platforms if they hate you so much? And I'm like, why would I leave if they, why would I voluntarily leave? Like, first of all, this is where like meaningful conversations are happening with people on the other side of the aisle. And why would I do what they want and remove myself? Like I said before, make them ban you. I think it's a better strategy to stay there and do what you can. First of all, there are so many people. If you remove your voice, like let's say you're being a voice of reason, or you're pushing back on these bad ideas, these dangerous ideas, this wokeness, this woke insanity. Removing yourself from that platform just means there's one less voice of reason in the public square. I don't think that's good for everybody. So I don't know. I think there's a number of reasons why we should stay on these platforms to the extent that we can. Unless, of course, the way to stay on them with our Babylon Bee profile is to delete a joke that isn't hateful and say that we did engage in hateful conduct. Then it's another story.
Right. Like stay on it for as long as you can. And if you get suspended, then hopefully the reason you get suspended is what you can make news on.
Yeah.
And shine your light.
Yeah. I've said that the greatest accomplishment on Twitter is not going viral. It's not getting verified. It's not building a following of millions of people. It's getting banned for saying something true. I think that's the greatest accomplishment you can. It's the greatest achievement there is.
Yeah, absolutely. Brick Roadicules. The Babylon Bee is one of the greatest fake news outlets on this plant. On this plant, none of these stories are even remotely close to fact. I can't believe you would platform such traitors to democracy. Shame indeed. Sometimes I don't know if I can't read or if people can't spell. From Matt Hughes, make bullying great again. I absolutely agree with that. Let's see. Danny MB, thank you. Okay. Okay, I got that one already. Yeah. Wow. Have people come after? Do you feel like a lot of people have come after you specifically, or is it more the Babylon Bee that you feel like gets more heat collectively?
Like me as an individual,
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of heat individually. I mean, there's been more recently with this Libs of TikTok thing with me coming to back her financially. Libs of TikTok, they are really, really, really mad at her, and they're throwing everything at her, calling her a terrorist and all this stuff. So that getting caught up in that has been very negative, and that was me personally, not it's not the Babylon Bee that backed her, it's me personally that backed her, and there's a distinction to be made there. But no, I mean, generally it's the bee that's dealing with this stuff, and then I'm just kind of like the face of the company that responds and deals with it publicly. But not too much. I mean, I do get hate mail, like anybody else that has a following or is in the public eye. I get those messages like "kill yourself," you're a terrible person. I don't know how you sleep at night, kind of stuff. But that just comes to the territory.
How do you sleep at night? On a My Pillow, probably. No.
On how was it that one of the Simpsons characters responded to that question? On a large pile of money with many beautiful ladies.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of recently, like, leave your fiance. You can come cook for me. Yeah, sometimes more positive. And then there was like, you're supposed to not to feed the trolls, but today I just was going back and forth with someone, of course, with just 3 followers. They were obsessed, like, with knowing, like, are you for Trump or against him? I'm like, what difference does it make? Like, what difference does it matter? Like, the year I turned around, it was like, oh, he's not so bad. Like,
yeah.
Oh boy, people just get very. I'm like, I know that we're just doing this so we can avoid our day-to-day lives. But yeah, staying on Twitter is important.
We take a lot of heat, but I'm not discouraged by it. It's like, for one thing, I don't think that they would be coming after us if they weren't like threatened by us in some way. Why are they threatened by us? I think it's because there's some truth to some of the points that we're making. And so I don't know. I feel good about it. If we weren't being attacked, then like when the New York Times said that we were a far right misinformation site that traffics in misinformation under the guise of satire, I'm like, you know what? As ridiculous as it is that they slandered us that way or smeared us, and we have to like tell them that they need to retract it, I would much rather them be smearing us than praising us. Like, imagine if the New York Times liked us. I would feel like we were doing something really wrong. So
also, that's giving you guys like way too much power. Like that would be my initial reaction. But then I'd be like, oh wow, we do have that much power, and you just let us know.
Yeah, I think I don't know. The whole thing is just remarkable to me. Honestly, it's crazy because we actually like at this point we're bigger than the Onion. Like we have more engagement and more traffic than the Onion does, which makes us like the world's most popular satire site, which is insane to me because we're the only one that I know of that deals with incessant ongoing censorship and these setbacks. Like free expression without barriers, we're facing barriers all over the place. So the fact that we've accomplished that despite all of these attacks and like the efforts to say that we're misinformative or that we're engaging in hate speech or we're inciting violence, like that stuff just happens endlessly, and it's hard to track all of it, and yet we're still reaching these levels. I think to some extent, and this is one of the other reasons why it doesn't bother me, is there's to some extent a backfiring that's happening here where they are in fact raising our profile and our notoriety when they're attacking us. Like they're literally amplifying the voice they're trying to suppress.
The
Now we don't have
Streisand
the same,
effect, right? Yeah.
yeah, we don't have the same reach on Twitter that we used to have, but like more, we've been a story in the media with this whole Twitter deal and Elon Musk acquisition. We've had more mentions in the media since we left Twitter than we had
Wow.
before. So, there is an extent to which that those attacks really just lift you up instead of tearing you down the way they're intended to. So for that, I say bring it on.
Yeah, and people are, I think deep down they really want truth, and when the mainstream media and the legacy media, like when their default setting is to lie, people are going to keep searching until they find something that resonates. And if that thing is not necessarily hard news, but an article that makes them laugh, it's like, well, shit, I guess I found my truth, and it's a satirical website.
Yep.
So it's really important, and I think it's helped a lot of people wake up, and I think it's helped to even inspire some of these, like, alternative, like, it's so great to see Daily Wire, doing entertainment. It's so great to see, people coming out with just, God, a couple days ago, Eric July, who was a correspondent on The Blaze, just started his own comic book universe, and it sold $1 million worth in like 24 hours, absolutely crushing it. It's going to absolutely
Awesome.
be competitive with Marvel and DC. So I just feel like, your site kind of it pokes holes, and then people can kind of push through.
Well, okay. So I like that you said poke holes. I mean, like, that what we feel like satirists are supposed to do, one of our main jobs, obviously we want to make people laugh, but we want to poke holes in the popular narrative. Like that's what we're supposed to do. And I think part of the reason that we're so successful is because we're one of the only sites that's doing that. Like so many comedians right now, especially the ones that have gone like woke, there's so many things that they're not going to allow themselves to joke about, and they're tiptoeing through this minefield, trying not to upset people and cross a line they're not supposed to cross. And the comedians who are like bucking that and pushing back on that and saying, no, this is the funny stuff right now. Like when Joe Rogan said, like woke shit is the funny shit that should be made fun of right now. Like the comedians that will actually take the risk to make those jokes that they're not supposed to make, they're going to attract an audience because people want the popular narrative to be made fun of. They want the stuff that is funny to be made fun of. And a lot of this woke stuff is insane and funny, and it should be made fun of. And so I think the people that do that, look, Chappelle is bigger than he was as a result of the attacks on him. Rogan is bigger than he was as a result of the attacks on him. The Bee is bigger. I tell young people, like when I'm talking to students or whatever, there are opportunities right now in comedy. There are huge opportunities to step into this void where like no one is willing to make these jokes because it's scary and you might get canceled. Make them. Dare them to cancel you. Let them amplify your voice by trying to shut you up. And people are ultimately hungry, I think, for real comedy. And real comedy is unafraid to speak the truth, even if, and especially if, it offends the powers that be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the fear in comedians from speaking the truth, or the truth they may not want to acknowledge, is like, well, the powers that be are the ones that are going to pay me. So it's like you actually have to risk being broke. Like truth has to be more important to you than making money. And I think that is what a true comedian should do. And the ones that are self-censoring and bending the knee to the woke, it's like, well, I kind of want to get paid, and
Yeah.
I don't want to mess up these credits. So
Well, there's now like, we were able to build a little bit of a following before all this stuff went down, and we started facing some of these things. So we have like, we have a lot of paid subscribers who are supporting us directly, but there are a lot of people, even if you're starting out and you don't have a massive following, like you can still appeal to people directly now in ways that you didn't used to be able to. I think, journalists are going independent and using Substack, like comedians are breaking out and doing their own like sketch comedy stuff and like connecting directly with people, whether it's using like some kind of a Patreon platform or whatever they're doing. There's ways
yeah,
of
just
getting like
throwing
back.
your own special up on YouTube is something
Right.
comics really couldn't do a few years
Right.
ago.
Yeah. Now, of course, you're subject to YouTube's rules and you got to be careful about getting the boot there. But there are alternatives, where you can put your content out there, and there are people who are going to be willing to support you directly. And it's another thing that I encourage people. It's like, there's not only opportunities in comedy right now, but there's also an opportunity for you to do something to push back on this cancel culture stuff by saying, look, these are the voices I don't want canceled. I'm going to support them directly. Like throw your money at them, rather than these big corporations that are woke and that are like, holding the purse strings, and try to cut them out of the picture to the extent that you can to support people that are at risk of getting canceled. That will go a long way in making sure that those voices don't go away that you want to hear.
Yeah. And every little bit like kind of does, make a difference. And I can understand people being like, well, I have to take my kid to whatever like the latest Disney flick is. It's like, all right, well, maybe that'll change in the next 5 years as we
Yeah.
get more competition.
Yeah, that's the tough part, the competition, because it's, they have control of so much, they own so much, but there are things that we're good at, and so I think that they're going to continue to be people who are creating, like artistic, creative people, breaking out of that mold and saying, I don't want to do the woke stuff anymore. So I think there's going to be a lot of talent available. And look, as they eat their own, you mentioned Daily Wire earlier, Disney cast out Gina Carano and they snagged her and gave her a job. And the fact that there are people that are doing that is a good thing. And I think it's the answer to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, Gina went from like a bit part on Mandalorian to like kind of leading a movement. Like,
yeah,
not to sound
now, she
gay,
was,
but
she was in a major Disney franchise, which was like
probably good for her
streamed,
bank account. Yeah.
yeah, it streamed limitless times. I mean, Mandalorian was unbelievably popular. So, is the new movie that she did going to be watched as much as The Mandalorian? No
Probably
way.
not. No.
Absolutely not. But it
Her
is
cultural impact is way
her
bigger.
cultural impact is huge. Her profile is bigger than it ever was, and she's free, and I think that she puts a value on that probably goes beyond whatever they were paying her.
Yeah. And I haven't watched it yet. I'm a bad girl. I said I would. I have to watch it. My friend Tyler's in it. I have to be a good friend and watch it.
Oh yeah, gotta watch it.
Gotta watch it.
Support canceled people.
So you guys support the canceled people. Yeah, in fact, I didn't even plan this, but the shirt I'm wearing. So all right, we kind of put this out a couple months ago,
Putin.
rooting for Putin, because I was like, I just think it's a funny idea, like where it confused your Facebook friend. Like, I think we're just talking about the idea, like your Ukrainian activism actually does nothing. Like, so even if I was super rooting for Putin, that also does nothing.
Right.
And the fact that like this slogan, this shirt pisses people off. Like the design was actually kicked off TeePublic. It sold like a couple, and then they booted the design. And I was like, well, fuck you. I took all the rest of my, shirts off the site, put them on flagranttriggers.com, which I heard about through a fan. I was like, fuck yes, let's work together. I'd so much rather have work with somebody who gets it, who's a little lower profile and who's not going to boot my designs off. And it's like, you're taking this seriously? Really? Like, you think who is this hurting?
Right.
Putin's never going to see this. And probably a Ukrainian person is never going to see this.
Right.
Who gives a fuck? So
I don't understand these, why these companies feel the need to exercise like, our customers' values need to align with ours perfectly, or else we don't want them. I just don't feel like that's in your best interest as an organization. Like, if you want to be as profitable as possible, but this is the thing, like companies aren't shooting as much for profitability as they are for like virtue points. So I don't know. The whole woke capital thing is insane to me.
Yeah, it's like, what company do you think you have the luxury to not get as much business as possible? Like you're so good and doing so well that you can actually like push some customers away. Like, all right.
It's pretty arrogant. I think, you saw what happened with Disney and what happened with DeSantis in Florida, and like the way that he's handled Florida and been very aggressive with them. I mean, you've seen companies like coming out and like, well, not coming out, but actually like pulling back and trying to be a little bit more reserved with this stuff and say, maybe we shouldn't be so political. Maybe we should try to be a little bit more like close-lipped about what we feel. And, because the country's really divided. It's just, it's insane to me that you just pick sides on these issues. Even with the abortion thing, as much, it's a very divisive issue. And to wade into those waters is like there's absolutely no reason for General Electric or Tesla or whatever the company is to like be weighing in on that stuff. Like you serve everybody. You serve everybody. There's people, there's pro-lifers and pro-choicers driving your cars. Like just stay out of it.
Right. Whether they're driving your car to church or to Planned Parenthood. Well, all right. That's kind of as long as they bought your car.
Yeah. What are they going to, if they don't like church, are they going to make you disable your GPS when you want it to lead you to a church, take you to a Planned Parenthood instead?
This GPS just took me straight to Planned Parenthood. What the
fuck? I mean, like, that's the next logical step.
That's if you buy a car in California or New York, the GPS just takes you to the closest Planned Parenthood. You're like, you know what? A little spring cleaning couldn't hurt. Just clean house. Yeah.
My dad is convinced. My dad's convinced that Google Maps drives him by stores they want him to shop at.
Oh, like, what are the stores?
He thinks, oh, well, it's just like whatever restaurants, stores, whatever. Like he thinks that they reroute you based on who's giving them the most money.
Oh my God.
And so like, so he's constantly like, oh yeah, my Google Maps just took me through this neighborhood, and right by a Walmart. What deal do they have going on?
Like, oh, my car just drove me to this strip club. Like, I don't know. I had to check it out. My car told me to. Like, what was it, that show MacGyver where the car talks to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting, but it's an interesting time, and just talking to you inspires me to go harder with everything I do. And I think you and the bee have that effect on more people than you'll ever even know about. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool. And thank you for telling me that.
Big fan.
I'll tell the rest of the team.
Yes, just send them my best. I should send you guys some Root for Putin shirts. Yeah, good times, guys. I think I got all of your super chats here. Oh, thank you, Matt Hughes, for becoming a member. Yes, maybe I could try to get you on Friday Night Tights someday. That's a fun show, where we just basically do this, but with more guys. So, Seth, what is coming up for you? Where can people follow you, etc.?
Well, I wouldn't suggest following the Bee on Twitter right now. You can still follow us on Instagram and Facebook and all the other like platforms that we mentioned. We really want YouTube subscribers. We're doing this on YouTube, right? I really want YouTube. We have 750,000 now. We've been growing really fast. Our YouTube content is amazing. Our team is super talented. We're putting out really great content there. So if you're used to just consuming like Babylon Bee headlines, like we do more than that. Someone mentioned earlier that Satan video, like the press conference Satan was holding after Roe v. Wade was overturned. We have videos getting into the millions of views that are just like crushing it over there. So check that out.
Do you know, I'm so embarrassed to say I thought I was subscribed to the YouTube Babylon Bee, but maybe they unsubscribed me. I had to just click on it again. So yes, everyone head to the Babylon Bee YouTube channel, subscribe, get your laughs on. You can follow Seth, but not the Babylon Bee on Twitter, because the Babylon Bee doesn't bend the knee.
You can follow me. I mean, I'm the pathetic conservative who hasn't yet been banned on Twitter. Not that I haven't tried.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely follow Seth Dillon on Twitter. This was such a blast. You're so great to talk to you, Seth. Thank you so much for coming on. I know everyone was very excited to see you. Thank you, chat, for your questions and comments, as always. And until next time, we will see you later.
Next time.
Bye.